The views, ideas, and content of WellSeekers and their guests are their own opinions, and you should always seek additional professional help around any of the issues discussed here on WellSeekers.
Welcome to WellSeekers, where we are in the middle of an incredible series we're calling the Rebuild Lab, where we're helping you rebuild mind, body, spirit after you've gone through any sort of loss, really, whether it's a loss of a dream of sorts. And sorry, I, I always say this show is real experts, real stories, real solutions. So even though I want to stop and re-record, I have a fake tree on set and I just hit it. So if you heard some crinkling, I just accidentally hit the fake tree. So I guess we do have something fake on our show. My fake tree. But other than the fake tree that I just hit, everything here on WellSeekers is real, real stories, real solutions to help you. And in this series, it's all about to help you in your rebuild process. So what is a rebuild process about? It can be about rebuilding after a relationship, rebuilding after the end of a job, the end of a dream, right? There's so many different ways we all have to start over. And this series is all about how do you start over, mind, body, spirit, right? We're talking about all of it. On this show, we're specifically talking about relationships and how do you rebuild after relationships. On today's show, we're going to have David Sherban. He is someone who I just love his videos online. He's a relationship coach, but he mostly talks about his personal experience. And I have a feeling he's going to tell us a lot about his personal experience and share his own story, which is what I've resonated with, is his own story and his own experiences. And I know you're going to as well. When it comes to relationships, gosh, there is, and I've said this before, and I feel like I need to say it every time, but because there's so much fake information online about relationships, you can see one story that's about do this in a relationship, and then it's like do that in a relationship. The thing I love about David is he understands the nuance of relationship, even though he's speaking mostly from experience. And he is a coach, but he understands the nuance of relationship. So I can't wait to dive in to this conversation with him. Before we get started, though, I do just want to say if you are going through a change in relationship, and that could be a romantic relationship, it could be a friend relationship, right? This is tough stuff. It's not easy, and it can trigger a lot of different attachment wounds, which is something that if you've listened to the show before, I'll link episodes on attachment and what that is. But it's not easy to take a step back after a relationship and look at like, wait, what is going on here? Most people do just often just hop into another relationship and blame it on the other person. Um, I've been guilty of that before in the past, but the time that growth has happened in my own life the most is when I've taken a step back and said like, okay, what didn't work here and why didn't it work for me? Right. And from the viewpoint of now I can grow from that so that this mistake doesn't get repeated, which is the goal, I think, for all of us, right? Is to learn, to grow, and then to not repeat the thing that caused us pain. At least that's my goal in life. But when it comes to relationships, it can be so easy um, to not know how to rebuild, to not know how to start over, and to get lost in that, which is why David is going to be coming on the show and talking to us from the perspective of a coach, but also as the perspective of a man and a person and a human, and sharing his experience. I know you are going to love him as much as I have loved his content. So we will be right back with David here on WellSeekers. And we're back on WellSeekers with our guest, David Sherban. David is a coach helping people build confidence, healing, and strength through, gosh, I've watched your videos, David, and they're so powerful. Even these short clips, right? Your words and your meaning, they have, I know, impacted people in my own life, which is why we reached out to you to come on the show. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that means a lot. I just started doing this to just share my journey, and the fact that it resonates so much with other people, it means a lot. So, thank you.
So this episode is specifically about rebuilding love and our definitions of love. And I personally, all these guests in this series, I picked personally. So thank you for your time and your experience. And before we started recording, David started to talk a little bit about his backstory. And I was like, stop talking because I want to record this. Um, can you tell us a bit about your experience, where you started and your evolution into where you are today?
I grew up dancing competitively. My little sister actually danced, and I got dragged around everywhere. So it was kind of like well, I might as well try this thing out. And so I did it for the next 20 years of my life. Um, Lived in Chicago, danced for a company, and eventually at one point, I ended up dancing on cruise ships. And I got to travel to Finland. I got to travel to England. I got to travel to the Caribbean. Eventually, I did another cruise ship where I traveled the East and Western Mediterranean, Canary Islands. Every single day, I was in a different country for the most part. I got to meet so many people from around the world, as you would on a cruise ship. Um, so just throughout my dance career, I feel like I lived a life in just that part of itself, just with so many people and so many backgrounds that I met. And I when I talked to myself and I knew that dance was going to be not a thing that I was going to continue to do. I'm sorry. Um, Fitness kind of went from a thing to supplement what I was doing as a dancer, in lifts and partnership or partnering and stuff like that. And it turned into my main form of activity. All right. I went from dancing 4 to 8 hours every single day to not, and working for my family who owns an advertising agency and doing graphic design, web design, and stuff like that. So I sat in a chair. So I got into fitness. Um, Fast forwarding through that, I ended up owning a few gyms. And the last gym that I own um, was less about getting people in shape, and it was more about helping people get out of physical pain and reclaim an active life. And that was very fulfilling. A great switch, seeing people who are 60 or 70 saying they could play with their grandkids again and do this or that, or the fact that they could just walk again was amazing. And I got to learn a lot of things about life talking to people who are 50, 60, 70 years old. Um, and over time, I just realized that the conversations that mattered most to me weren't about the sets and the reps. They were about what people were carrying inside. And I'm a very empathetic person. I've been always kind of a led with my heart type of person, which sometimes felt like held me back. And now I'm fully embracing in that. But I'd hear about, broken trust, emotional burnout, loneliness, and something about me wanted to lean into that. And so, I mean, I've been through my own hell, heartbreak, depression, losing parts of myself I never thought I'd get back. Um, and so I shifted from helping people move their bodies to helping them move through life. And so now I get to work with men, and I never thought that I would end up working with women or couples. I just thought that I was just going to be helpful for men. But the overwhelming amount of response from my content, with women reaching out, asking for guidance themselves, how to help their husband, how to help the relationship, came from that. And that it just kind of totally blew me away because I was just trying to tell my story, and I hoped that it would just at least help one man. And now I get to help more, which is crazy because I never considered myself to be a relationship guru or anything like that. I failed in a relationship, um, in a few relationships, but the last one, the biggest one, that was kind of my wake up call to want to find myself again because I lost myself through that business that I owned. And I didn't take care of my ex the way that I should have, nor her daughter. Not that I was a bad human being. I just wasn't present in the way that I should have been. And so I had to figure out how that happened.
Yeah, there's so much in there. David, from your personal story to the work that you do now. I mean, I love how you've holistically sort of stayed open to where this process has taken you, right? And where the evolution has gone. One of the things that I zoned in on though as I was watching your content is how much it is focused or was focused towards men, right? I am in the mental health space and the media space, and one of the gaps that we do see is mental health content for men specifically, and I feel like it is an emerging area, which I personally love to see. What is it about men, mental health, love, some of the areas that you're exploring? Why do you feel like that gap exists?
I think that we forget how to talk to each other. I think a lot of times, at least relationship wise, we think we figured out the other person. And so there's no more exploration happening throughout the entire relationship, right? The dating stops, the having fun stops. And life just kind of happens, right? You have kids, and then when you have kids, obviously there's more human beings that you need to take care of, and some things get put on the back burner, or it's time for the two of you to progress in your career, and so you kind of sacrifice on some other things, all for the greater good of it all. And somehow the, the everything that you were working for just kind of completely falls off, and you both kind of look at each other and go, I don't even know who you are, let alone who I am anymore in this process. And so that's for relationships. But as far as for men, I don't, at least my generation and obviously generations before, and I heard this over and over in the men's retreat and I hear it from men that I work with all the time. We weren't raised by fathers to show love and emotions, right? We weren't, I always say it like this: we weren't taught to speak the language of emotion. We were taught to speak the language of duty, right? What we provided and how we protected. That is how we were shown love. And love for us as men was supposed to be simple. It's supposed to be protect, provide, and stay. Right. And then now that was supposed to be it. It wasn't supposed to necessarily be all the flowers or pick up this or pick up that. Not that we're supposed to be slobs or anything, but we were taught to go out and do things and come back and provide and make sure that our family had everything that they needed. But a lot of times in that process, we lose ourselves as men, and we weren't taught to talk about our emotions. And so we have emotions. We just suppress them, right? Until the point where we can't hold them in any longer. And we explode some ways in healthy ways by crying, some ways in not so healthy ways, which is unfortunate. Um, but yeah, I think men are so afraid to be fully seen, because we have this culture of, kind of man up, or, you give your buddy a hard time and stuff like that. But deep inside, I believe every single man, even the ones that are saying man up, are all having a problem or an issue with expressing themselves and being fully seen and emotionally and mentally, and not just for the things that we physically provide for our families or ourselves.
Mhm. No, I mean, I couldn't agree more just systemically and as a society and culturally, there has been a shift, right? And I think the expectation has changed too from women that men do show up in that way. And it's a learned behavior, right? It's a learned behavior to hide it, and it's a learned behavior to express it. So the curve is big sometimes for people, which is another reason why your content is so important. But one of the things you said, David, that I really gravitated towards was around the rebuilding, which is what this series is all about, and how at the end of that relationship, it sounded like you had to rebuild your ideas around love and relationship and how to show up. If someone's just starting out in that process and they know something isn't quite right and they need to rebuild, can you just share your personal experience and then also some ways people can start tapping into where do I go from here, right?
For me personally, and sorry if I get emotional, but when that separation happened, I had already been depressed and anxious, and I had suicidal thoughts and all of that probably the year before we had ever broken up. And then she sat me down and she's like, I want to, break up and I want to separate. And I was very numb in that moment. I just got very quiet. I didn't know, I kind of felt it coming, but at the same time, and this is me, I can't believe it. I consoled her in that conversation and made her feel better about the decision that she had made. Obviously, I get emotional, and the biggest thing was thinking about her daughter for me. That was very emotional for me. But outside of that, after that next day, or maybe it was the same day, it's the first time I looked up the word therapist to try to get help. Um, and there's companies out there, right? There's apps out there and stuff. And I clicked on one and I got about halfway through the application and I didn't finish it. I couldn't finish it with all the questions that it was asking. I To me, I think it felt like I was admitting failure by answering some of those questions. And so I stopped. And luckily, I got an ad for this men's group, and it obviously hooks you to get in, and it's a great group. So don't let me not say it's not, but it hooks you in by saying how to fix your marriage without talking about it. And it's like that sounds great right now. And it was for men who were business owners, and I was a business owner. Um, And I think because there's another struggle with not only trying to manage a family, but managing other people outside of that and taking on the responsibility that you're their livelihood. I had my first phone call, which went amazing, and I signed up. Um, and what I ended up finding out, while I learned a lot about relationships in that men's group that I'm still a part of, and how to talk to a woman, how to understand what she carries, and how to listen without trying to fix things, and how to be present and how to see the things that she does every single day, the thousands of things that are going through her head that she does that are exhausting to her, that is just almost too exhausting to explain what she does every single day. Um, and inside of that process, owning up to what you did and it's a hard thing to do, owning up to what you did in that relationship. Um, and a lot of it is just a lack of showing up. You learn about yourself and you learn that you forgot yourself. You stopped doing things that filled your cup. You stopped doing things that lit you up. You just slaved yourself away in this business because you thought that was the way to provide. And then all of a sudden you look up and you're like, I don't do anything with anybody. I don't have any friends the way that I should have. I don't have a brotherhood anymore. Um, and you find out why you're the guy sitting on the couch after work, just completely exhausted and not doing anything. And so it was more about rebuilding yourself than it was about rebuilding the relationship. And that was how you fixed the relationship because you finally found out how to make yourself happy with yourself. And it wasn't no longer this needy validation that was needed from your significant other to fill you up. It didn't come from there. And that negative, needy energy wasn't felt by her anymore. So she was able to soften and let her guard down and not feel like she's your mother, basically, and that you're just another child. And so, that's where it started for me. But it started by, getting you have to get honest about the damage that's happened, whether it's that you did to yourself, that's happened in a relationship. What did it cost you? Where do you feel guarded? And then gently shift from, can I trust them to can I trust myself to see clearly, set boundaries, and walk away if I need to. Rebuilding trust starts internally. You have to keep promises to yourself. You have to show up consistently for your own needs. And when you do that, your nervous system begins to believe that you yourself are safe again. And that's when trust can actually start to grow, and not just in yourself, but eventually in others. So
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I have a clinical background as well, and that tracks completely from what we know from all the best structural family therapies Gottman, right? Everything you said is in line with all of those techniques, and then add your personal experience into it, right? So it makes total sense from every perspective what you're saying. I wonder though, because I know again through my own work, people trying to realize what are my boundaries, what are my needs. That's hard sometimes when you are so disconnected, right? And you've absorbed the cultural standard of what I need my needs to be or my identity to be. How did you start looking at yourself with that authenticity, David, and say, what are my boundaries? What are my needs in relationship?
that was really hard. And I think it took a long time for me. Even it was months before I could even, for me personally, because my relationship ended up not working out. But And so there was obviously the whole heartbreak and everything that I had to also process and grieve through and everything. But setting boundaries of it was not only setting boundaries with, okay, what are between, partners, right? What am I going to accept and what am I not going to accept, right? I'll definitely pursue you, but I'm not going to chase you. And I have a video about that one. But um, setting boundaries with myself, setting, commitments to myself, the way that I communicated with myself, and creating for me, it was creating structure again in my life so that I could continue to show up for myself and not be lost in it. So you know, most people, unfortunately, right, in my situation, right, they wait until they're already resentful to speak up, right? And but like healthy love, starts with knowing your needs and communicating them before you ever get into survival mode. Um, and a lot of people have a hard time speaking up um, about their boundaries, right? Because they feel like they're either a going to set the other person off, or they're being too controlling, or this or that. But you just have to start small and practicing saying "I feel" instead of like "you always," right? And like use your voice without an apology, right? But also without an attack. Um, it's you're not trying to control someone by setting boundaries. You're just inviting them to um, be deeper in their honesty. And so, kind of reframing that love starts here, realizing it's not about earning someone's approval. It's about building a relationship where both people feel safe to be fully seen. And I think people have a really hard time with what that really means. Because the person that's having and you start setting boundaries, if you're the other person that didn't set the boundary, it can sometimes feel like an attack on their character or what they do and stuff like that. And it's like, no, that's not it at all.
But I think for some people, when you talk about feeling, right, like unseen, it can be just as scary to be seen, right? As well. And like when you're in a relationship and maybe you've just gone through a breakup, maybe your relationship's struggling, and you are struggling with, do I have the ability to be seen? Do I have the ability to show up for somebody, right? Like your self-worth starts to be questionable when you're in that shaky ground. What are some things that you've done or when you were rebuilding or within the context of relationship to shift your mindset around, no, I'm worthy of love, worthy to receive it, give it, right? Like to change those foundational structures.
Um, I think a lot of times when a situation like that happens, you look at yourself like, what did I do wrong? Right? That made this happen. And I think sometimes people need to understand that a rejection isn't always about you. It's often about their wounds, their timing, their capacity to go through things. And that was partially like it was with my breakup. Right? She had gone through some things that she had not fully processed through. Like it wasn't necessarily my fault. Did I not show up in the way that I should have? Could I shown up better? Absolutely. But were there things that she needed to work through that were always going to affect our relationship no matter what, unless she works through them? Absolutely as well. Right. And so you just have to remember that your worth, that's untouched, right? It existed before the relationship and it still does now. So instead of asking why I wasn't enough for them, ask why do I believe that I had to earn love in the first place, right?
Mhm.
You don't become lovable through someone's attention, right? You recognize that you have your own values, your healing, and the goal isn't to be chosen. It's to choose yourself so deeply that anything less than respect becomes obvious to you. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a role in inward reflection, which is really hard for people, right?
I love this again for so many reasons. But one of the things that I've been sharing with other guests is that, and I don't know if you saw this study, but 85 to 90% of mental health relationship content online is non factual, right? So not clinically based. And the way I think that shows up is a couple things that you said, right? Like about chasing David. I think that's one of the things I hear the most, especially from women. Like, I'm gonna not text him so he chases me, or I'm going to, right? Like these little, I call them games. I feel like they are games, right? Um, and that's not authentic relationship, right? The goal isn't to get someone to choose you, to chase you. It's to show up with authenticity, with self-worth, with your foundation of who you are authentically individually, right? And then see if relationally that's the right place and space for you. And that delineation, I feel like it's so hard right now. How have you seen that show up? And have you ever struggled with that? The being chosen?
Yes, I did. I want to speak on my last relationship, and you'll hear that a lot because that's where a lot of this, rooted for me, and it's been in other relationships too. But um, I I chased affection and self worth from my ex. I absolutely did. Um, I was needy in needing that validation from her. Um, and it's, you know, instead of creating an environment and being confident in myself for her to pursue me, I almost like repulsed her in a way. I guess kind of sounds like a really harsh word, but like I pushed her away by trying to make her want me. And, so yeah, that one hurt, especially because I found out through this process, like, I'm an anxious attachment person. Like, I very much am, and I can process through it now. I can feel when the anxiety starts happening. I can sit there and breathe and go, "Why do I feel this way? What are the emotions that are coming up, and is it something that I have control over, or do I not have a control over it anyways?" And so, like, there's no reason to worry at all, and if I do have control over it, what can I do to change that? So, but yeah, yeah, I used to tell myself at one point that, I would like to do things for girls because I was pursuing them, but I was doing it to chase, to validate. And I've been that guy that's like, I saw your text, but I'm gonna wait another like 15 minutes, right? Not
Mhm,
seem like I'm too like excited or needy, right?
mhm,
And so I've certainly been there. So
mhm. How did you break that in the rebuilding process? Because it's big. The games are real right now. They're they are. Yeah.
I cried a lot. Um,
Can you say more about that? Because I also in the beginning when you said, "I'm sorry," I'm getting emotional. Like, no need to apologize. I feel like that's welcome, right? Like, the emotion's welcome. But can you say more about why you cried? Like, where the emotion comes from?
uh, it's an overwhelm of emotions, and not allowing myself, one, to grieve, to understand, past things that have gone through, and it was a release. Like, um, I used to hold myself back from crying because I'm man enough. I can tough it out. Like, what's the point in crying? What's that gonna do for me? It's not gonna fix anything, right? And until I started doing more breath work, really, that's when I really started being able to cry. Um, and for a long time, those tears were tears of pain and grief and, loss and heartbreak and stuff like that. And I can still remember the day that I was driving down the road and I started crying. And I thought to myself, I'm like, you're not sad right now. Like, you just hung out with your family and all that kind of stuff. And I realized for the first time that I was crying because I was happy and I was proud of myself. So tears of joy actually were a thing that started to become a part of my life as well. And there's such a release that men don't realize can happen with crying, and it seems like it's such a non-manly thing and it's a weak thing, but I just went to a retreat and we all cried for 4 days. Like, the guys that you look at, there was a Navy SEAL that was there. There's guys that, like, they're just huge and jacked and own these huge corporations, like, guys that you would just never think would just break down and cry. I watched them all cry and, like, release and process through things that happened in their childhood or businesses or the relationships and stuff like that. So I think crying is a great thing to do. And here I am as a man saying it's a great thing to do, and we need to do it because someone said it when we were at this retreat. Is that when you're a kid, right, and you're a little boy, and something happens, your mom or your dad runs up to you and goes, "Shh, shh, shh, you're okay. Nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong," right? To help you stop crying. But it's like, well, no, something is wrong, and there's a reason that I'm crying, and I should be able to process and feel those emotions so that when I become 14, 16, 18, 50 years old, like, I feel like it's okay to actually feel those emotions and I understand those emotions.
If I could sort of put themes and verticals of what you're talking about, what I'm hearing a lot is vulnerability and authenticity. And in your relationship that you referenced, it sounds like it was your reactions were fear-based almost, right? Or old narrative-based of what you needed to do. So that pivot into authenticity and vulnerability, those are big shifts. If someone's listening and is dropping in and saying, I think I need to move towards authenticity and vulnerability, what are some steps that people can do to do that safely?
I think for me, and I think for a lot of men specifically, is finding a brotherhood. Like, I think that that is such an important part. And I'm not talking about the guys that, you grew up with and you just give each other a hard time. I'm talking about, like, a real brotherhood where you can bring your problems and issues to, and you can cry about, and they'll sit there and they'll hold space and not try to fix you. Um, and because it gives us that, I'll call it that safe space to do it in. Like, part of the reasons that men don't share, right, and don't go through this and aren't vulnerable is because we fear being rejected or we fear being shut down, right? We were shown that growing up our entire lives is that, emotions are bad for men and that you'll get made fun of if you're the boy that's crying, out on recess and when you're 6 years old, and that traumatizes you for the rest of your life. And so creating in a space or a brotherhood or getting around those type of men, definitely helps. It's kind of hard to do it. You should be able to do it with your partner. I think you absolutely should be able to say whatever you want to your partner, right? That you should feel safe enough that you can do that and that your partner is not going to yawn or try to fix you or shut you down or this or that. But I also believe that your partner is not the person that you should release to every single time you have something going on. I think that that also can put a lot of weight on that other person, right? And now they're carrying that as well on top of what everything else that they need to release as well. And so I think having that brotherhood to be able to release those things, because they're also going to understand what you're going through a lot better than, like, what a female is going through, right? Or what a woman is going through. And vice versa, right? Women go through a lot of things and process things much differently than what we do, even though we both have emotions. Being able to have that, and I think it's really scary for guys to try to pursue that or to put yourself out there into that. And even in men's retreats that I've been in, sometimes it takes a couple of days for, like, men to, like, truly open up and to truly know that it's a safe place. But by the end of it, we've got phone numbers and we're able to text each other when we have a hard time. And then sometimes in men's retreat, very first person that speaks up just spills it all out, and that sets up how the rest of the retreat's gonna go. And again, we still have everybody's phone number and stuff like that. So I think that is one of the biggest parts, is, bridging connection. Yeah, that connection that's rooted in safety, right? And I think that's what that brotherhood, um, does for you. So
What if, because I have so many friends, female friends, that their partners want that brotherhood, but it's really hard to access it. What are some ways for men or even for women listening if their partners want to access a brotherhood?
I guess there's a few different ways. One I always say, and it's the easiest way, and especially if you're looking to be on a health journey at the same time, because I think that's definitely a pillar of just life in general that is helpful in all of this process. Um, is I tell men to go on Facebook and look for a men's work group or a men's workout group that works out early in the morning. They're usually free and they're typically everywhere, and guys don't really think about that. But I think that's one of the greatest ways for guys to sweat together and then have conversation with each other. It's typically a group that has a like-minded mindset already, and usually is very welcoming with open arms. If you don't have that, there are men's groups that are virtual that you can sign up with. That's the one that I did after, my breakup. They do have in-person retreats and stuff like that, but there are virtual men's groups. You can just type up, brotherhood or whatever, and then social media, right? There's guys that are out there that you can follow that you can send a DM to, right, and have a conversation with them, or just follow them and just look at how they live their lives and be inspired by them. Because usually once you start following one guy like that, the Instagram algorithm, it's pretty good, and it'll keep sending you, other guys to look to, and I think eventually one of those guys is gonna have a men's retreat, and it'll be your opportunity for you to just dive into that, and you will have an instant brotherhood from there on moving forward after that retreat happens or during that retreat. Um, so it's got to be intentional. It definitely has to be an intentional thing. Or you can do like one of my buddies is doing, and you just start a men's workout group yourself, right? Every Saturday morning at 8:30 a.m. We're gonna work out and we're just gonna do something. Or you can get guys. Um, I don't know if guys like to go hunting or, whatever, guys want to do. I was gonna say book club, but I don't think there's that many men to book club, but maybe there are. Maybe there are. But yeah, it's that would be those are a few different places for suggestions. And um
What about for your female clients, David? I mean, my sisterhood comes from the gym, comes from church, right? Comes from a neighbor, and we have a couple minute conversation and we're getting coffee or we're walking in the morning, right? So it does appear, at least in my experience, that there's more connection points and there's more opportunity to connect and just more of an openness as opposed to if you met a neighbor and he said, "Hey, do you wanna walk tomorrow morning?" Right? Like, that feels like something that doesn't often occur, but with women, that happens all the time, right? So, it's definitely different, but probably similar places and spaces.
yes, probably similar places and spaces.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
women have a much easier time talking about what's going on in their life with each other than men do. Right?
Yeah.
Men either think, this is just what men go through, or they think I'm the only one that's going through this and no one's ever going to be able to understand.
When you've worked with people and I'm sure you've also had people message you about this. What are some of the most common things you find people need to unlearn when they're in relationships and wanting to rebuild?
Love should feel easy. A lot of times it happens for men. They're like, I'm showing up, right? I'm protecting, I'm providing, and I'm staying. Why is my relationship so hard? Right? It's just supposed to be simple. Like, what's going on? She's constantly nagging me and complaining that I'm not doing this and doing that. And, she's quiet sometimes. And then other times she has a snarky comment. Right. And then vice versa for women too. Right. He comes home and he's just sitting on the couch. And, instead of helping me with the dishes or the laundry or the kids' school stuff or this or that, or she has her own job. And so love sometimes gets this rap that it's supposed to always be soft and everything, and that loving someone can also be telling somebody something that's hard to say because you love them so much that you're willing to say the hard thing that may hurt their feelings in the moment, but it is only because you have their best interest at heart at the same time. Um, and so I think sometimes people confuse that with like, "Oh, I don't wanna hurt their feelings, so I'm just not gonna say it." And it's like, "No, you should say it, right? You love them, right? You don't want them to be embarrassed, you don't want them to fail, you don't want them to do this, like, you wanna, quote, unquote, "save them from having that by being open and honest with them, and that's love also. So,
Mhm.
um, it's effort and something you have to choose every single day.
And so much of relationship is about not just the content, but the way that it's delivered, right? Communication is key in relationships. So there's also a way to say something to someone, right? As hard as it may be, that they will receive it in a way that actually promotes growth instead of deteriorates the relationship. And in my experience, again, professionally and personally, it's about how it's delivered, the communication style, which is a big key component in relationship.
Oh, absolutely. I talk about, when the point of a relationship starts getting into like a lot of bickering and it starts to having arguments, I go, when you're about to say something to your wife or your husband, and you know it may not be received well, right? You are already expecting a negative response. And so you already have your walls up, slightly or fully, right? And so do you think when you speak that your tone and the way that you address that and your energy isn't felt that by them, and so therefore their walls start to go up, right? And they end up actually responding the way that you expected them to respond, and so that just gives you further validation of, like, what was the point of having the conversation? Rather than going in and going, "Alright, I'm gonna be open. This conversation might be hard, and I might not like what's about to hear, but I am determined to have a positive outcome in this."
Mhm.
Going in with that mindset, so much better than going in with the already defensive, mindset. So that's something I talk about a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, and Gottman would say that, who's, like, one of the, like, godfathers of relationship, right? Um, Last question for you, David. I've been asking everyone about tools that they use in their own life, in their own wellness journey, in your own relationship journey. I know you have a wellness background. But if you were to pick maybe one sort of current tech, whether it's an app or a person that you love, and then one old school thing that you're using, whether I was using rest, taking little breaks and restorative rest. If you could choose one of each, what's critical in your own wellness journey right now?
A tech or a person was the first one?
Yeah, something current, an app, a person you're following on social.
Yeah. I don't use an app, like, I don't have, like, a daily habits checklist or something like that.
Really?
Mm-mm. I don't.
Oh, that shocks me, and I know that we don't know each other well, but I feel like you'd be someone that had, like, all of the apps, like, all the way
I
on,
I
like
mean, I use a lot of apps for things to write notes in and stuff like that, but none of them are necessarily for habits. For
interesting.
me, it's more so people. Like there's a friend of mine, his name is Brian Pruitt. He's somebody that I follow, and it's just always a positive light for men, specifically. And then I've got another one who the retreat I just went on with Michael Chernow. Um, just their content and just how open and vulnerable that they are. That helps me stay accountable to myself and make sure that I'm always challenging myself with, am I on the path to being the man or becoming the man or re-becoming the man or unbecoming the man that I've been and into the person that I want to be. Um, so it's people for me. I'm a very people connected type of person. As much as I love technology, physical touch or conversations, that's what really drives me. Um, and then an old school one.
Mhm.
I have one, I move my body, so I don't really gonna call that one. Physical fitness has always been a part of me. Actually, I have, and it's an exercise that I did in one of the men's groups. uh, a phrase. Well, it's more like a paragraph. It's not really a phrase, but that I say to myself. I did an exercise in one of the men's groups, and it was right after my breakup, and we had to sit down and write down all of the emotions that we were feeling in that very moment. And all of them, they were negative and fear driven and all of that kind of stuff, right? And that was called our stick man version of ourselves. But then we had to sit down and go, think about a place when you were on top of the world. Um, and then write things down. So mine is, and I say this to myself every morning and every night, I am alive, happy, confident, or alive. alive, happy, confident, joyful, wanted, appreciated, respected, desired, whole self, selfless, funny, creative. I have a lightness about me. I'm loving, I'm caring, I'm living in the moment. I'm empathetic, I'm very supportive, I'm charming, I'm magnetic, I'm trustworthy, I'm trusting, I'm worthy, I am reliable. I will do what I say I'm going to do, and I will do it when I say I'm going to do it. I am whole, and I go back to the top and say, I'm alive again. And that's something for me really grounds me every single day and keeps me on my path, because all of those words, or some of those words, entail me being accountable to myself to continue to be that man that I said that I am. So
If people want to find you, we're going to put all your links below, but where should they reach out?
Instagram, just David James Sherban, and Sherban is spelled Sherban. That's really only where I put out content. A lot of people ask if I have content on TikTok because apparently their husbands only have TikTok and don't have Instagram. So maybe you'll find me there shortly as well, and then maybe YouTube. So, but for right now, Instagram. That's where you can find me. And shoot me a message.
Amazing. David Sherban, thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. This was awesome, amazing. Glad I got to share.
We'll be right back on WellSeekers. Thanks so much to David for being on the show. Such a powerful conversation. Before we let you go, I want to leave you with, if you've been listening to the show, we like to leave you with one digital tool and one more offline tool to help you on your journey pertaining to what we talked about on today's show. So one of the things that's online, and this is not an app. I know I normally give a lot of apps, but there's something called the Attachment Project, and they have an incredible quiz. I know that we were, talking about rebuilding, but I feel like we can't talk about rebuilding without talking about attachment. And attachment is the way that we relate to people, the way that we love. It's like an incredibly bigger topic, so I'm giving you a very small summary. If you want to learn more, I'm going to link past shows that we've had on attachment that really dive into what attachment is. But I want to leave you with two tools that will help you understand the basics of attachment. The first is something called the Attachment Project, and they have a quiz online where you can learn what your attachment style is. I love this quiz. I give it to people all the time. Professionally, I will send it because it's an evidence-based quiz. Or even personally, I know people that have taken it, and it divides it into not just your attachment style, but how you have attached to your mom, your dad, your partner, or if you had a partner, and then like your own primary attachment style. So it's really detailed, evidence-based. I'll put the link below. Highly suggest that. And offline, there's a book called Attached that is the basic concepts of attachment. I feel like, again, we can't talk about rebuilding and relationship without talking about attachment. And I have a 4-part series on attachment that dives into all of this that I would so love to share with you all. So please check that out, because I love talking about relationships, but I love attachment theory because I feel like it's the epicenter of change for a lot of people. So check out those episodes. Take the test if you want, and the book Attached is just phenomenal. So we'll leave that link as well. From all of us here at WellSeekers, thanks so much for joining us and being a part of this series. Thanks again to Dave, to my producer, Jen, to Chris, who's editing this. And to all of you, thanks for letting us be a part of your family, and thanks for being a part of ours. We're so honored to spend this time with you, and we'll see you next time on WellSeekers.
What's on your mind? Email us at hello@wellseekers.com.